Welcome everybody to another edition of Amplify Your Business. Today we're going to be talking about networking and how to do it properly so that you can really leverage this great tool to grow your business. And in today's world where we're still in a situation where we have COVID and different levels of different lockdowns, and this is probably going to be with us for a few more months now because we're filming this in late February. So with COVID, that really changed how people were approaching networking. And so there are some basics, though, that really did apply, whether you were in the old days of pre-COVID versus now. But there are some new things, too, that we want to talk about. And for that, I have brought on to today's show, Michael Hughes, who is North America's networking guru. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Lance. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for taking some time to share with our audience, all the things that you've learned and that you're teaching people. And I know that you're teaching people across North America and you've been doing this for a long time. But in your opinion, what has been some of the biggest changes that have happened in that networking world, the networking space between pre-COVID and now COVID?
That's an interesting question because, all of us late last March, early April, it was like we all got slapped upside the head with a baseball bat, right? It was shock, complete shock. And I was no different than anyone else because, as you just mentioned, the majority of my business was the face-to-face piece. So overnight, my whole business plan disappeared. So like many other professionals, I had to look around and say, like, how am I going to do this? Because I was presumptively, I was working in a face-to-face environment and I didn't have that anymore. But what I quickly realized, and I think many professionals already have realized this or are coming to the realization, is that even though the physical piece, the face-to-face piece isn't there anymore, businesses are still open. People still have a need for products and services. And so it's a question of transitioning. So networking hasn't stopped, it's just transitioned to an environment that's more aligned with our current circumstances. So even though we can't meet face-to-face, most associations, organizations have transitioned to a virtual format, kind of like what we're doing today, Lance. And what most professionals need to come to terms with is this is the only vehicle we've got. They may not like it, they may not be comfortable with it, but this is all we got. Once you do that, once you come to terms with that, you can begin to look at how can you leverage, maximize, and in fact, effectively use the technology, which is right now what I call the great equalizer, to grow your business even in these times.
Yeah. And you know what? This is one of the things that I realized as we started getting, into the first couple months of COVID or after the first couple months of COVID, people, when it first hit, everybody was kind of shell shocked. Like you said, kind of got hit upside the head with a baseball bat. And so everybody just kind of stopped doing almost everything. And so after a month or two of that, then people started to talking about business, started realizing that, hey, their businesses need to go on. They need some products and services. And the people who are selling products and services realized that, it was okay to talk about that. We were in the middle of a crisis. We didn't know what was going to be happening, but we still could have those conversations. So when it came to the networking part of it, I myself really dove deep into the online networking as much as I possibly could. So I was attending every business association networking group that was out there, and there was a lot of different ones that popped up throughout the summer and then into the fall as well. And so I was attending as many as I possibly could. Did you find that a lot of people were hesitant to do that because they were just unfamiliar with the technology, or were they people who basically didn't do a lot of networking before, and so they were just really struggling with the whole concept of networking and how to do it regardless of the platform? What did you find was happening out there?
First of all, your assessment is 100% correct, that all of us just sat there for about a month, and many of the professionals that I was talking to said, I'm just going to hunker down, I'm going to focus on my existing clients, I'm going to get things going. But we all quickly realized that wasn't going to be enough, because if you only focus on your existing clients, you're subject to the law of diminishing returns, right? There's only so much more. And so there was a need to get back out in the marketplace. And so when people started looking to get out in the marketplace, there were basically three types of professionals. The first one was people who are already involved in this stuff and good at this stuff and just embraced it. there were other people who kind of looked at it and said, you know what, I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm not sure what it is, but I realize that it's all I've got. So I'm going to start getting involved in it. And then there was the third type of person, professional, who said to themselves, you know what, I just don't know what to do. Every time I go into one of those online networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, I mean, it's just overwhelming. It's intimidating. And so they're grasping with what's going. And over time, I think professionals, but by default, sometimes more than by design, have ended up getting more involved in that because they realize that it's all we've got.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a really good point. And so like for myself, I was really comfortable with these kinds of Zoom meetings and different types of online environments. And so the way that I transitioned was I was having the same kind of conversations I would be having in person, but now in an online environment, which actually I thought was more effective, because when I walk into a face-to-face, physical networking meet up in the past, you would, see somebody that you knew, or a few people that you knew, and you'd be over and you'd be catching up and chatting with them. And so a big chunk of that time that was spent in that networking evening or afternoon was spent with people who you already had relationships with. And it wasn't really expanding my circle as much as what in the online environment it has, because now with the online, it's just a lot more efficient. We're seeing a lot of these networking groups break people off into these smaller, 5-person little breakout rooms in which you can have some, 1 on 3 to 5 people discussions. You can really get to understand their business, their needs, and you get a chance to, express what it is that you can offer as well. And so I was finding that from a lead generation standpoint, the virtual networking was actually more efficient for me than the old face-to-face ones.
Yeah, from a process standpoint, you're absolutely right, because it took away some of those extraneous type of like the travel involved,
Yeah.
with a lot of the issue of having to deal with the wrong people and all of that kind of stuff. So listen, I'm a believer that there's some great stuff that has happened as a result of this huge dilemma that we've been facing, and that's what this has done, is opened up a whole new vehicle for us to take advantage of. And yes, it's difficult, it's different, and you need to ramp up on it, but it can be very effective, because what it can allow you to do is to connect more quickly, more effectively, and essentially bridge the gap that you might have when it came to not being able to connect with people, because with technology you can connect with anybody, right?
Yeah. Okay. So now you work with companies and business owners, business leaders all around North America, and I imagine some people had some great familiarity with other types of ways of networking online, and others not so much. So for those people who weren't doing much, what did you recommend that they do to start?
Okay, so there's a couple things I would speak to first. If I was talking to you as an entrepreneur that came to me and started saying, Michael, I realize this is important, I'm just not sure what you do. Here's the fundamental premise I tell people. I said, a social network is a social network. So if you're thinking about networking online and you're not sure what to do, just fall back on what you would do face to face, because the fundamental principles, the fundamental behavior is exactly the same. So if you're not sure what to do when you're dealing online, just ask yourself, what would I do in a face-to-face? How would I set this up? How would I have the conversation? So that's the first piece. The second piece is to be more strategic, because as you mentioned early on, you said to yourself, I got to be on here, so I'm going to be on everywhere. Well, that's great, but it's not good. Because when people ask me, you're a networking guru, Mike, where should I network? Should I be out everywhere? I want to grow my business. I tell them no. I said, your credibility grows faster within a group than across groups. So finding the fewer groups, even one group, if it's the right group, and being active in that, will do more to build your credibility, to help you connect with more people, help you share value, and get there faster. So it's all about remembering the fundamental principles, being more strategic. And the third thing is to be consistent, so many people just show up at one event, and where they're there, they're uncomfortable because they don't know anything, they don't know how it works and everything. And so they go through the process, and maybe they make one contact, but they don't go back. Every time you go back, every time you embrace that environment, just like joining a group and going back to meetings, it will be more comfortable. You will understand the process and how it works. You will connect with more and more people every time. You'll be more comfortable. And all of a sudden, you'll find that this is a natural, normal, organic part of stimulating the relationship process, which is essentially what this is all about.
Yeah, you're bang on there, right? It's all about the relationships. The deeper you can build those relationships, and I love what you said about going, focusing on a couple or even a single networking group or opportunity as opposed to really spreading yourself thin. Because you're right. Like when I was in the early days, I didn't know which places were going to be the best, and so I was participating in as many as I could, and eventually I dropped
Yeah.
some of those that I was participating in because I just wasn't seeing the results, and I just didn't, quite frankly, have the time either. Once things started to open back up again, and the business started to roll again, then I was in, okay, now we have to do the business as well. And so I didn't have the time that I did earlier on to dedicate to some of those. And so, yeah, I strategically selected well, not even a handful, three that I really stayed really strong.
So one question I get asked sometimes, Lance, by folks who are in your situation, saying, which group should I join? And I always tell people there's three options. The first one is some groups are self-evident. For example, if you're a small business and you're working in the hospitality industry or supply the hospitality industry, it's self-evident that the hospitality association is where you should be networking, right? That's number one. And number two is sometimes it's effective for you to just do a search and look at all the networks that are there and identify the one that is most closely aligned with your target market, right? Because if you're going to network, you want to fish where the fish are, right? And so you want to have a target market. I mean, the presumption that you have a target market you want to do business with, and you want to find out where they meet, because anytime you have an interest area, you get a community that evolves around that, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. So it's self-evident search. But the third one, I think the most effective one, is if you want to know where to network, why don't you call your clients and ask them where they're networking? I mean, they'll tell you. If you call enough clients, they will tell you what are the 2 or 3 networking groups that span their group. Join those. That's by default the place where you should be.
That's really great advice. I love that. Again, you don't think about it, I think, a lot of times in really going to the source, your clients, and really trying to understand it. Because we also, like in the rest of the marketing stuff that we do with our clients, one of the things that oftentimes we're tasked with is trying to figure out what the key messages are that we need to weave into the marketing communication pieces that we're creating for our clients. And the best place to go to that is to really talk to some of the existing clients about, okay, well, what's resonating with you? What was your needs? How did this product or service satisfy that? And it's just an extension of that same philosophy, which is, where do you guys spend time? And tell me a little bit more about that. And then from a business development standpoint, that's where I'm going to be standing as well.
Good.
So now, when it comes to like LinkedIn is obviously a platform that a lot of people think of for B2B type businesses, and we're a B2B business. You're a B2B business, and a lot of our clients and the people who are on this call are B2B. Do you find that LinkedIn, spending time there in the groups or in the just commenting and engaging people in your feed, do you find that that's quite effective in terms of a networking strategy?
Yeah, and speaking to the online networks first, I mean, there's any number out there, right? And people say, well, which one is the right one for me? Should I do Instagram, or TikTok is a big one? Clubhouse is the big one everybody's talking about now. And I always tell people that what you should be active in the network that is most closely aligned with your target demographic. So wherever your target demographic is, like some B2B markets are on Facebook as opposed to LinkedIn. Others are Twitter, depending on the demographic. Now, each one of these networks has its own culture, has its own community, and has its own communication style. So that's why it's important to identify the one you be on and to get on that one and to get active on it. And that's where you market. Now, for many professionals like me, I deal with high level, high quality decision makers. And so my target demographic is generally on LinkedIn.
Mm.
So that's where I tend to be. And, I call, you talk about all the online networks out there, but I always talk about the big three. LinkedIn, which I call the ambassador's ball, which is formal, structured. There's an etiquette there that you follow. It's very professional. The second one is Facebook, and I call that the weekend house party. It's more loosey-goosey. The line between professional and personal kind of gravitates. The opinions sometimes are the same way. And in Twitter, it's the third one I call it online speed networking, right? Because it's life at 140 characters a minute. So it's just identifying the one for you. Now, in my case, it was LinkedIn, and it's all about, when you get onto these networks, we get so enamored with the social part, right? That we want to just get in there and do all that stuff, but it's not about that. Most professionals like you and me are not on there because they need more friends. We're on there because we want to use it as a business development strategy. It's a vehicle to grow our business. So first and foremost, it's about identifying the right network. Second of all, it's about defining the objectives that you want and need. And the objectives really roll about three things. It's real simple to me: cash, clients, and contacts. How much revenue, what's the return you want financially? How many clients is that going to come from? And how many contacts you need to make to do that? And so the clearer you are on that, the more success you're going to have. So that's the first piece, is having clarity. And then the next one is it's just about being involved. I call it, having the courage to get involved. Because a lot of people look at that news feed flowing through, Lance, and they say to themselves, boy, I don't know what to do, man. There's so much going on here. Where do I go? What do I do? And so again, it's all about being clear on what your value is and who you want to do business with. And it's about getting involved. Something as simple as liking. If you're reading stuff and you like it, comment on it, share it. That in and of itself starts a conversation. Most professionals have never thought of it like that. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so one of the things that you touched on there was just how intimidating it can be in LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, it doesn't matter, the stream of comments and articles and shares and discussions that are happening. And you, in any one of those groups or any one of those platforms, there are people that are like just really high volume publishers of content, and they're really active. And then there's a lot of people, the vast majority, I think, of the people are more consumers of that. And so I like what you're talking about in terms of just trying to get a little bit more engaged, and don't be intimidated. Just start liking the things that you like and commenting on the things that you comment on, or that you're inspired to comment about. Because one of the things that I think a lot of people do is they just really feel like, well, I don't know if my comment is going to be, valid, or it seems like all these other people have got, better ideas or better comments or whatever. And so there's this, I don't know, just a sense that you're not going to be able to participate in the way that you want to because you're looking at all these other people. They're just a small percentage, and they got to that place not overnight. I mean, they grew their behavior, basically their the commenting and the discussions and so on that they're having there. That's took time for them to get comfortable with it, and then once they're comfortable with it, they started doing more and more of it, and obviously saw results, and that's why they keep it up. And so I encourage you guys to just jump in and start doing it. And I need to take the same advice that you're giving out, because I do much more consumption as opposed to me jumping in on those conversations. I'm a
Okay,
lot.
so let me give you just a little bit of a framework around that, and
Sure.
this is for you, and this is for anybody listening as well. When I talk about having the courage just to get involved, it's like joining a chamber of commerce and never going to a meeting. Would that make sense to you? People say no.
No.
Well, the online networks are the same. So the first piece is to just start getting involved. If you read stuff, if you're a consumer like you are, you read stuff that you like it, and comment on it and share it. So that's what I call passive involvement. That's the first steps. But others want to get more involved. They say, Michael, I want to get on here to grow my business. So I want to share content. I want to share value. And I think that's a great idea. And you alluded to the content shares. And the big one here is video, right? Everybody talks video. There's lots of video out there. The reality is the majority of video is by a very small percentage of LinkedIn users. The majority of people focus on text. So there's video and text.
Yeah.
So video, there's a lot, but it's by a small percentage. The majority of people who share value share content, and I'm putting that in brackets, content. It's all about sharing value with people, not trying to sell, share value.
Yep.
This is a process that takes time. It's a marketing communication strategy. If you went to see the local radio station and you asked them, you said, I want you to develop a marketing program for me, would they just say, I'll put you on the morning news for a week, that ought to work? They will say, no. They will say, you need to be on there for 3 months. You need to be on there for 6 months. So if you start posting stuff that is important and has value, and you do it over time, people will gradually begin to get more aware of it. Now, in text, there's two different types of text. There's what they call long copy and short copy. Long copy is an article, 1,500 words. It's usually got lots of meat to it. The top 5 ways to network more effectively during COVID times, that kind of stuff. And a lot of people like that. And then there's short copy. Short copy is what's labeled now as a post. It's usually 2 or 3 sentences or a paragraph. You can have, and here's the reality. People view short copy more than long copy, and they view text more than they do video. Why? Because our attention span is shorter. So for anyone listening to this that wants to get more active, wants to develop an audience, start doing a combination of short copy and long copy once a week, twice a week, but just do it consistently. Over time, people will get to read it. They will like it. They will wait for it to come. They will share it with their network, and exponentially your visibility will grow.
Yep. Yeah, one thing that I would add on the video front, and so what we're finding right now, and you're seeing this in platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels, is the shorter videos in those platforms are getting huge consumption now, versus the longer format videos. So just like what you were talking about with regard to the text, there's the different lengths of articles and the shorter ones who get higher consumption. We're seeing the same thing, and it's starting to roll into LinkedIn in a much bigger way now. They're still in the early days on LinkedIn, but it is starting to become something that is unavoidable, I think, just because of the success that the other platforms are having. Even in YouTube, which is longer format content, generally speaking, they're introducing a Reels sort of style of an option in terms of that real quick consumption of one video to the next video to the next video to the next video, and just rolling into each of them. And so every platform is starting to go that direction because they're getting the engagement now there.
Yeah, Lance, you're absolutely right in that video is the emerging communication vehicle, whether we like it or not. And some people are just good at it, and they like it. And what I tell people is the exact same thing that you said, is 2 things. If you want to do video, do it. But just make sure, number one, it's short, 2 minutes, probably even 60 seconds or less, and make sure the value that you're sharing is not only through the words that you use, but through the environment that you project. Make sure it's professional and that you do that.
Yeah.
And there's no question that it's the emerging media format that people and companies are investing in more, because it's what we see. And short is better because our attention span is so short, right? You've got to get in, you got to deliver it, and you got to get out.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've done some other episodes as well. So for people who are interested in learning a little bit more about how to do the video yourself, to be engaging and to make sure that the content is right for your audience, that you're delivering it properly, go into our archives over at amplimedia.com/amplify. You'll see, and just search for the video ones, and you'll see a couple episodes on that as well. Now, going back to the platform. So LinkedIn, I just want to dig a little deeper into that, because we touched on it briefly, but the groups versus just hanging out on the feed. Do you feel that people, because I know a lot of people are on the feed and they're commenting and so on, which is a form of networking, but the groups can be quite effective as well. Do you recommend that, yes, they need to be finding a group, or does it matter in your opinion?
I don't think one excludes the other. And again, all I'm going to go back to is the fundamental principle I tell people that I work with, or that I speak to about this, is to be strategic. Okay. Number one, if this is all about growing your business, it's all about clients, right? So if we just weed this down, and I was talking to you, Lance, I would say, okay, how many clients do you want to get off this? And you said, I want one client a quarter. And so I would say, okay, here's what we got to do. How are you going to, like, what kind of clients do you want to work with? And you would say, well, you know, there's a specific demographic I'm looking for. So my message would be that you need to identify that. So when you're going through the news feed, you can strategically identify that person. The second piece to that speaks to the group thing is every interest area develops a community. So it stands to reason that probably on LinkedIn, there are thousands of groups. To find the group that is aligned with the target market or the ideal client that you want to connect with, join that group, become involved in that group, begin to share value with that group so you can do both together, right?
Yeah. Okay, really good. Now, what I'd like to just briefly touch on as well is once you've made that contact in that online networking, whatever format that online networking is taking and whatever platform you're on, once you've made that contact, the thing that matters the most, and I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing the networking is we're trying to turn people into customers. What do you recommend people do once they've made that initial connection with somebody?
Okay, and you know, that's an excellent point, and it's really the $64,000 question for many people. And here's what I keep telling people: if we go back to fundamentals, okay, this is about a business development strategy. You build your business by creating and developing relationships. That's what networking is. It's the intentional process of creating and developing relationships that always start with an initial contact and move towards an ultimate outcome. It's a process, right? Now, that's the good news. The bad news is when we get online, we tend to throw all that process that we've embraced in real life, we throw it out the window because it's a different environment. And we tend to think like this: it's a linear process. When it comes to online networking and building relationships, here's how we tend to think: connect, qualify, close. Right? Because when you're going through that news feed, you see a name, a guy in a company, you go and you look at his profile and you say, that company, that person, that job, that's a client of mine. I know exactly how I can help them. So you want to connect, you want to have that conversation, a discovery conversation, and you want to close them.
Yep.
It doesn't work like that. So the essentially the step that's missing in there, the single biggest link, yet the most abused part of the process, is moving from that connection to a conversation. Because when you connect, when somebody agrees to connect with you, it's simply an exchange of business cards. That's all. And your job then is to start a conversation with them. And this is the crux of the issue we now have, where 80 to 85% of the relationship building process pre-COVID was focused on verbal and nonverbal communication. You meet somebody face to face, you develop a rapport with them, and you find all that out. Now, 80 to 85% of our communication is technology-based written communication, which for all of us, because of the way we've been trained, is information-based, too structured, and too long. And so we need to change our thinking about how we communicate online with these people that we connect with, to think in terms of a vehicle as opposed to an objective. So when they agree to connect with you, they only want to date. They're not ready to get engaged, right? So you go through the dating process. So you want to use your written communication. You want to make it a vehicle. The objective is not to sell. The objective is to talk to them face to face. That's when the selling starts. Technology doesn't sell, people do. So that's the first piece, is think of a vehicle. Second of all, make your communication conversational. You've got to project emotion. You've got to project curiosity, sincerity, intensity, transparency. The words you use are really important. And the third piece is that whatever you write, go back and look at it and carve out 30%, because it needs to be short. It needs to be one piece. It's a pendulum. You want to get swinging back and forth so that that person will like you and want to talk to you more and agree to have a live conversation with you, because that's when the selling starts. That's the biggest issue for most professionals in the new online network that we're dealing with.
And so how do you go about creating those opportunities for conversation then? So
Okay.
What would you recommend people focus on?
Okay, and so my experience has been, first of all, the basis for communication is context, right? You have context, and you have that through the profile the person has, because you can look for context in in their career path, in their current role, in their education, in their interests, all of those. It's about building context. Context is holistic, right? Now, there's any number of topics you can use, but my experience has been there are three topic categories that tend to deliver the best results. The first one is, of course, what I call industry, and that's the business context. On a platform like LinkedIn, it's a business platform, professional platform. You're a professional, I'm a professional, so we're connecting. You can use that business context to start a conversation. You have to be careful, though, because that's a two-edged sword. Because remember, online, everybody's wondering what's his agenda, where's she coming from, what does she want, right? So if you come at the business piece too strongly, you end up turning the person off and commoditizing the conversation. So it's the natural place we tend to go, but you have to be very careful with it. So that's the first one. The second one is what I call proximity. And proximity is something on that person's profile you can use to engage with them with. Where they went to school, the companies that you've worked at, some interest area they have. I just connected with someone yesterday online, and I noticed that they had spoken at a conference. So in the email message I sent them, it's nice to meet another kindred spirit in the speaking business. He wasn't in the speaking business, but I used that as a context. Because remember, online there's no relationship, right? Yeah. So what you want to do is relationship inertia is what I call it. So what you want to do is get that relationship pendulum swinging. So when they send you that request to connect, they're taking the pendulum and swinging it to one side. Your response has got to take the pendulum and swing it back, and you want to keep it swinging back and forth to a point where you can say to them, or come to the point where you can say, you know what, really enjoyed chatting with you. Love to have a conversation and find out more about you and your role. We tend to try and do that by email. It doesn't work. You want to use the email or the online communication to send that pendulum swinging high enough that that person will want to talk to you. That's where the real relationship building starts. And that's the mistake that the majority of professionals make when it comes to building relationships using online networks.
That visual and analogy with the pendulum swinging is just absolutely brilliant, Michael. I really like that, because it is true. It's all about the momentum that you have within those conversations in order to keep it going, right? How many of us have reached out to somebody and had a quick little exchange, maybe jumped too quickly into trying to close or trying to push the business a little too quickly, and then it just stops. the pendulum comes to an end. Yeah, so we got to keep it swinging. So, and that's what you were talking about before, is the value, right? You always have to be delivering value, because that's what
I tell people the single most important skill, as far as I'm concerned, the single most important skill for professionals today in this environment that we're dealing with now, yeah, and for the next year and even further, to me, is developing and maximizing your online communication skills, mastering technology-based communication in a way that can grow and nurture and develop relationships, because the words you use are so important. It's the only thing the other person sees. And so that's hard. That's a new skill, because when we talk about written communication, think in terms of how we've always used it: to write a contract, to send information, to process some kind of piece, as opposed to a conversational exchange that moves the relationship forward.
Yeah, really well put. Well, this has been really fascinating, Michael. I really appreciate you taking the time and explaining all this to us. Now, I receive your weekly newsletter and it's just chock full of great content, information on these things that we've been talking about today. But again, a really great example of how you're delivering valuable content to people on a weekly basis. And so for those of you out there who want to see a great example of how to do this, I definitely recommend that you subscribe to Michael's newsletter, because you're going to not only learn the content, but you're also going to see a great example. Michael, how would people sign up for that?
Well, the most effective way to do it is simply to go to my website, www.networkingforresults.com. And there's a little box in there where they can just enter their information, and they'll not only get a 13-page ebook that speaks to my entire networking methodology, but they'll also automatically get registered to receive that e-tip, which is probably one of the most powerful marketing resources I've developed over a number of years. And people tell me, like you, it's got a lot of value. So thanks for suggesting that, Lance.
Yeah, no worries at all. Anytime that we can, share some valuable advice and valuable tools to, our audience, we're going to do it for sure. And this is one of those ones that is truly full of value. So thank you for producing that and letting everybody know how to access that. And I'd imagine if anybody wants to have a one-on-one conversation with you, one way to do that would be to reach out to you via the website then as well, I presume.
Yeah, the website is probably the best place to do it. My email address is info@networkingforresults.com, and there's a contact page on the website that they can use that through. So.
And of course, anybody can reach out to you on LinkedIn too and connect with you. And that's how you and I actually, connected to put together this show. And so you just search for Michael Hughes, and you're going to find him, I'm sure. So thank you.
And we are proof that it works, right, Lance?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We have that pendulum swinging now. We've had a really great conversation. So let's keep it up. Okay, well, that's I think just some great valuable advice that everybody can use in their networking strategies. And this is again what Michael's talking about. This is part of the strategy. You have to be strategic about it. You want to make sure that you are building some pieces around this so that you are not just out there blindly making connections but not really creating that value exchange and really turning them into conversations that will turn into business. So the first step is getting active, like Michael said, is we're in this all together. This COVID online environment is thrust upon us, and so let's just get out there and do it and become more proficient and effective with it. And then let's take some of this advice that Michael has and really turn it into an effective way of growing our businesses. So with that, if anybody is interested in checking out some of our other episodes, we do have that archive over at amplimedia.com/amplify. So this episode will be there as well as any other future episodes. So I encourage you to check those out. And if you know a business that would make a great guest on this show, definitely reach out to me, as I would love to have a conversation with them and hopefully share some more advice to all of you. So thank you again, Michael. Really appreciate it. Everybody take care and stay safe.